Welcome to Sinister Studies. My name is Kim, and I'm joined each week by my kiddo Ben, where we'll discuss all things sinister up to and including high school. As with all things sinister, listener discretion is always advised.
Meow, 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 meow.
It's been a really long time since we've been back here.
It's been so long.
I know, it has been. We did see some fucking angry ass driving, though.
Yeah. We saw some cows.
We did see some cows.
We saw cows, and that was great. Don't tell anybody, guys. Don't tell law enforcement, especially. But we will. We will be stealing one. We will be taking a cow, and it is going to live in our house with us.
Yes. We're just gonna go and snag us a cow.
Yep. Just a little baby cow. The big ones are too big.
Yeah. Big ones wouldn't even fit in a truck. So
no.
Yeah.
Meow, 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 meow.
So we shall jump right back in to sum up our last episode. Puritans are a lot. Adolescent girls, a lot. Innocent people getting accused of witchcraft, not cool.
Oh my god, really? That's crazy.
And when we left off, the trials and executions. Okay.
What?
I can't with you doing the meow.
Sorry. I didn't even realize I was doing.
Oh my god, you're just meowing and you don't even realize you're meowing. Wow, that's a lot.
I have to lock in.
Forget Puritans. This is a lot.
I'm gonna lock in. We're locking in, guys. We're locking in. Okay.
So the witch trials started in earnest. They'd hung Bridget Bishop. They're working their way through their list. Time had stood still because during this time, everyone was obsessed with the witch trials because, let's face it, there was fucking nothing else to do other than, farm and shit like that. And why would we tend to our crops that we need to survive the winter when we could watch the witch trials?
Yeah. You work your farm, you go to church, you watch a witch be hanged.
Pretty much, yeah. That's. But they didn't work their farms.
Oh, their slaves did. I'm sorry.
No, everybody.
Even the slaves?
I don't know. Even the slaves. I don't know how many slaves.
I think the slaves are probably working the farms.
Not to the same extent that it should be, because they usually need everybody else to help work the farms. So everybody is focused on these trials. So on July 19th, Rebecca Nurse, who had initially been found not guilty of the crime of witchcraft, but whose verdict was overturned, the courts overturned the jury's verdict.
Damn. For the drama, for the plot.
Sarah Good, Elizabeth Howe, and Sarah Wilde were all hung, all while still proclaiming their innocence to their last breaths. A month later, George Burroughs, Martha Carrier, George Jacobs, John Willard, and John Proctor, whose family owned Proctor's Ledge, where Gallows Hill stands today. So he got hung on his fucking family's property.
That's
pretty much.
L plus ratio.
We're all hung for their crimes.
What is this aroma? It smells like pumpkins or apples or something, like fall. Like baked goods.
Do you have your baked goods out?
No.
I mean, Logan's cooking, but it's It's meat. It's ground turkey.
Well, I can smell that too. Wild turkey.
I did have my apple. But that's it, my apple dumpling.
And, okay. Meow.
But that was like an hour ago, so I don't know why you would be still smelling that. In September, the courts decided to try to press a confession out of 71-year-old Giles Corey. Clearly reading the room correctly, he refused to enter a plea. Because if the accused refused to plea, either way, he legally couldn't be charged for his crimes. And if he couldn't be charged, then he couldn't be found guilty. And if he isn't found guilty, then his property isn't forfeited to the local government, thus allowing it to be passed down to his remaining family.
Real shit.
So he knew what they were jockeying for. His wife's him standing in the way.
Between the government and this guy's property?
Yeah, pretty much. Because if you're found guilty of a crime, you forfeit your properties, jurisdiction, whatever they may choose. But obviously, we know that Samuel Parrish is greedy. People in general are greedy. We're already just throwing shit against a wall and seeing if it sticks, so Corey was having none of this. And pressing, for those who are not aware, is a method to procure a confession under extreme duress by stripping the accused, laying them down, and placing a board on the trunk of their body, at which point large stones would be placed upon said board slowly, and the weight becoming greater and greater, which would have inevitably slowly crush the victim. Corey's torment lasted for 2 days, in which he never uttered a single word. The last time the sheriff asked him for his plea, he did speak. His last words were, "More weight."
And he ate! He ate with that. He absolutely cooked. He cooked, he served, and then he ate it. And then he ate it and he left no crumbs.
So they did add more weight. But Corey did not give them the outcome they so desperately wanted.
Sucks for them. Hold up. I know a song about this guy.
There's a song?
Yeah. You want to take a guess what it's called?
More weight?
Yeah.
Where is this from?
What do you mean, where's it from?
Like, why did somebody write a song called More Weight?
Because
about
he's badass. Like, I don't know, because he ate. Like,
who made this song? I have lots of questions.
I don't know. Yeah.
Jesus. Anywho. A few days later, Salem would have its largest scale, but thankfully last hanging, where they hung Martha Corey, Margaret Scott, and another sister of Rebecca Nurse, Mary Easty, Alice Parker, and Predator. Sorry, don't have it in me to say that correctly, apparently. Wilmot Red, Mary Parker, and Samuel Ward. At this point, the rest of nearby Massachusetts were becoming more and more concerned and alarmed with the proceedings in Salem, again asking Increase Mather to reiterate his thoughts on the matter of spectral evidence being solely used to condemn people to death, stating it were better that 10 suspected witches should escape than one innocent person should be condemned.
Which is, I mean, kind of real.
A lot of people paint the Mathers in a terrible light in this whole situation, but I think they're just an easy target. But clearly, both Mathers were on the same page. That spectral evidence, not a good idea. This whole thing, probably not a good idea.
I'd say definitely not a good idea. Why'd you pronounce that so?
I don't know.
Idea. Like, I can't even replicate the way you pronounced that. Like, that was just.
So, this time, people started listening to them, however.
Oh my god, crazy. It's almost like they were with the whole time.
The governor would get word of all these shenanigans, and he would decide to disband the court, which was handling the witch trials, which was all well and good, but there were still a number of accused withering away in jail, 5 of whom already had sentences and were awaiting their executions. So the big question now would be what to do with all of these people. The governor decided that Superior Court would now be dealing with these cases beginning on January 3rd, 1693. And they would exclude spectral evidence during these proceedings. By the end of January, the courts would exonerate all but 3 of the remaining 56 accused persons. And a date for their execution was set for the following month, along with the 5 leftovers from Salem's trials. So think about all the people who have already died, and the 5 pending death, and they had 56 other people in jail awaiting trial. 56. That's a lot of fucking people that were.
They were just like, you know what? You're a woman. You're a woman.
But the accusations against the men were picking up too. But the men were the more influential men that did not get along. Town leaders and church leaders.
You're a woman. Witch. You don't agree with me? Witch.
And that's a pretty fair assessment of the whole situation. Because now the people are still not after the winter ended the year before, people started coming together, so that people started talking more and plotting more, even if they weren't calling it plotting. That's exactly what they were doing. They were trying to bring down the people who were most likely to rebel against them, or the people who were most likely to succeed at rebelling against them.
And what are they going to do with them? How are they going to bring it up? Witch.
I mean, that was the best and most handy excuse they had at the time.
I mean, it's convenient.
So the governor realized that shit went extremely sideways with all of these proceedings. So he issues a reprieve for the 8 awaiting their fate.
I would like to make an announcement. Dinner is done.
Okay, you wanna?
Thank you, Logan.
How'd you put that back on so well?
That was impressive.
Okay.
So the governor issues a reprieve for the 8 awaiting their fate, and as long as they could pay their jail fees, they would be free to go. Because at that time, the accused and their families were required to pay for the time in prison, regardless of guilt or innocence.
That's dumb.
Unfortunately, not everybody had the means to pay their jail fees, and on March 10th, 1693, the last victim of the Salem witch trials was 79-year-old Lydia Dustin, and she died in jail.
R.I.P. Queen.
In the years following the trials, many of the families of the condemned were outraged, and rightly so, but none more than the nurse family. They held Samuel Parrish personally responsible for the travesty that had occurred in their village. They refused to return to his church.
Okay.
And that's a big deal, because if they didn't go to his church, that meant they were traveling at least double the distance to go to a church in a neighboring town. And that was telling people something without saying a word.
It's not that they stopped going. They were just like...
They still went.
They still went. Because they're like good Christians or whatever. But they refused to go to his church. They literally went so far out of their way, because in their time that was so far. And you know what? They were kind of real for that. In fact, I would say they were incredibly real for that.
No, I completely agree. Like, they knew what the problem was, and they were going to stick to their guns about it. And their influence in the area was such that the crown actually stepped in and ordered Parrish to settle their grievances, which Parrish refused to do. In fact, this hardhead doubled down and held fast to his position. But the crown was pissed. And they put enough pressure on Parrish that he issued a statement as only the finest narcissist could. Yes, mistakes were made.
Oh my god.
But the outbreak of witchcraft in his town was really God spitting in his face. And yes, maybe he was wrong in regards to spectral evidence. But you know, the devil is a finicky being. And let's face it, maybe he was influencing all of those claiming to be afflicted. And yes, maybe Rebecca Nurse pled innocent. That may have been true. And maybe they shouldn't have relied so much on spectral evidence and the testimony of bored adolescents. But everyone should just go ahead and forgive each other and move on. That sums it up. He did not ask for forgiveness. And not for the wrongs that he so obviously committed and facilitated. He asked to be forgiven for the wrongs that people perceived that he had committed.
Oh, what a bitch. I've seen, like, YouTuber apologies better than this. I've seen Notes app apologies better than this.
Like, that's like, and I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry you feel like that. I'm sorry you took it that way.
Yeah.
It's truly not my fault.
He's like, yeah, maybe, like, my bad, but, like, get over it.
Pretty much. That was the best he could do. That was the best he could do.
There was this YouTuber named Colleen Ballader, and she was interacting inappropriately with minors. Let's just say that. And she went completely offline for months, and then she came back, and her apology, she didn't apologize, first of all. Her comeback video was her talking about how she was being a ukulele song about how this was a toxic gossip train, and how they were just canceling her. And one of the lines was, "The only thing I've ever groomed is my 2 Persian cats."
Oh, that's gross. That's gross. That's gross.
Yeah.
So, even though Parrish did have a number of congregants standing squarely behind him, he had even more who would refuse to receive communion from him.
Oh,
they didn't quite go so far as the nurses did, but they were still going to make their point.
As they should.
This was very concerning to the other area ministers, and they would end up taking a vote and come to the conclusion that it was time for him to go.
I mean, long overdue.
Among those on the panel of ministers were both Increase and Cotton Mather, both of whom voted to remove Parrish. And so, in April of 1696, Parrish would resign as Salem's minister.
Yay! Yippee! Woohoo! Did you have to read the Scarlet Letter?
No, I didn't have to, but I did. What?
Why?
Why did I read it?
Yeah. For funsies?
Pretty much.
That's fair. Did you like it?
I mean, it's I didn't not like it. It's been so long since I read it. I really can't.
I know when I mentioned having to read the Scarlet Letter in front of Dad, he was like, "Oh, I love the Scarlet Letter," and it's like,
I feel like that. Stop being gross. So, Massachusetts is now under severe scrutiny, and Cotton Mather was tasked with writing a bill in which he discussed the incident, where he said that the judges were honorable,
debatable,
better than common people,
debatable,
who succumbed to the epidemic of hysteria. Again, because we're talking about prudish people, I say that went over like a fart in church. So the governor decided that the bill would be rewritten, and Massachusetts would concede wrongdoing in the entire debacle. And in 1697, what is Oogie Boogie upset about me using the phrase fart in church?
He's boogieing.
He's boogieing?
Yeah.
The batteries are dead. We need to replace Oogie Boogie's batteries. In 1697, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts would undertake a fast of repentance specifically for the atrocities that took place in Salem Village.
Yeah, because that's going to fix everything. They're like, people died, but you know what? We're going to fast. And it's going to make everything better. Like, okay.
And Putnam Jr. decided eventually she would rejoin the Salem Village Church. She would be required in front of the whole congregation to read a statement of faith, during which she apologized for her involvement in the fiasco. Okay. So yes, I did misspeak the name. So earlier I said in Putnam Jr. it was Sarah Good's daughter. So Dorothy Good, the 4-year-old who was accused of witchcraft.
That's actually insane. So
there's a theory from 1976 that maybe the accuser's hauntings and visions were a hallucination, which, to be honest, initially could have been entirely possible. You see, their main source of carbs was rye, which can, under the correct circumstances, become infested with ergot, which is a fungus which can cause hallucinations when consumed. So basically, they're tripping.
These teenage girls ate some bad rye.
Totally plausible and likely that this started the issue. Because remember, the rye that they're eating at the end of the winter has been in storage. Probably underground, because they dug
Yeah.
little areas. Like we found some in the woods when we were hiking a while back, little pantry areas. So there's a good chance that it basically grew mold and these girls were tripping balls.
Potentially.
But, and this is all my opinion. Here's the thing about life during those times. It was hard, like way harder than you and I could ever imagine. On top of the long, dark winters and the threat of attack by the natives, and while not having any protections provided by the crown, everyone was working pretty much really long days, physically demanding jobs, including the children. They would get firewood, water, have to pick the crops. And once they started adolescence, we're naturally going to be more confrontational and act out more. Now you add on to the fact that they've accidentally ingested hallucinogens.
Not having a good time,
And
I'd say.
what would
Hi, Piper.
the
Piper's
natural
joined us.
punishment for these people, for these girls, be for acting out? Because remember, they started acting out in January. They probably got more chores, and they were probably harder, more physically demanding chores at that. Because that's the way things used to work. So when the initial girls, who very well could have eaten tainted bread, were given the diagnosis of bewitchment, people started pitying them. They felt bad for them. They didn't have to do their chart. They wouldn't have had to do many, if not any, chores. And then they started throwing around accusations. And now other girls were seeing them get out of their chores and getting a lot of attention in a time where the girls would normally not get this type of attention. The girls would not be believed. They would not be listened to. But now that they were bewitched, they would be. And so other girls started throwing around accusations and so on and so forth. And it even grew to the point where grown women were doing this. Possibly for the same reasons, but also possibly so they themselves would be less likely to be accused of witchcraft. And all this would go on, resulting in mass hysteria, because when you get to a certain point, you start to believe the act. You start to believe what's going on, what you're saying, because you have to, because that's regardless of how implausible it sounded.
And it's also like easier to, in your mind, justify all of this happening if you're like, oh, well, they were just witches.
Yeah, that's the best for to keep your self, like, that's your like stopgap. Like that helps keep yourself separate from what you're doing. What? What? What?
I heard that coming all the way over there. It was just quiet. And it was like foreboding, and it just kept coming closer and closer.
So, and so many people were making claims of bewitchment and seemingly showing evidence, and people were making admissions of guilt. So whatever they were doing, they were getting away with, regardless of the fact that they had pins in their clothes and whatnot but and we also need to take into account the accused. If we break it down, the initial group of women were outcasts, people who were looked down upon for their poverty or their questionable choices. With these people behind bars, they were essentially thinning the herd. But then people began getting bolder. Why should they stop at the downtrodden? Why not take down those people we maybe had some beef with, or our families had beef with? People who were seen as holding status and power, those people who maybe, if not removed, would stand against their shenanigans. Because the second crop of people who started getting accused were the ones who doubted the trials in the first place.
Yeah, at a certain point, it just becomes convenient.
It does. Because people were noticing that patterns were forming, and some would be vocal about their disagreements, and no one really wanted to risk retaliation. And we're going to add to that the fact that anyone who admitted guilt was tossed into jail, but anyone standing firm in their innocence was executed. Which means that anyone that had accusations levied against them were completely out of the way one way or another. In late 1711, Massachusetts would move to restore the civil liberties of the 19 victims of the trials, 12 of whom were executed. Why is everybody's car? It's dirt bike. Is it dirt bike night? That's what it sounds like. 12 of whom were executed, and to provide restitution for the atrocities committed against them. But that was not enough. And fast forward to 1945, when the descendants of Anne Prudidor would begin to lobby to have the names of the remaining victims cleared, a feat which would take 12 years.
12 years? Should not have taken that long.
No. And even when they were cleared, the resolution originally stated Anne Prudidor and certain other persons. It did not name those other persons because that was good enough, right? After all, the other descendants weren't lobbying for the cause, so.
Yeah.
So this resolution stood until October of 2001, when all the victims of the Salem witch trials were named and cleared of all charges. Unfortunately, at that time, they forgot one, so in 2021, the last of the accused was added to the resolution, finally clearing all of the victims.
Yay.
So we've mentioned a lot of the victims in the Salem witch trial, but not all. So here is the complete list in alphabetical order.
Yes.
Bridget Bishop, George Burroughs, George Jacobs Sr., Giles Corey, John Proctor, John Willard, Martha Carrier, Martha Corey, Mary Easty, Anne Prudidor, Alice Parker, Mary Parker, Rebecca Nurse, Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, Sarah Wilds, Susanna Martin, and Elizabeth Howe. And I will add Dorothy Good to the list because in my mind, she definitely was a victim, even if she didn't end up dead, because she may have been exonerated, but sadly would end up going mad as a result. And she had good cause. She was not only accused of witchcraft as a toddler,
Insane,
but she would be held in prison with her mother, who would eventually be executed for her supposed crimes.
Insane.
Even though she was tiny, she was still subject to interrogation, and since toddlers parrot whatever is said to them, she did, by no fault of her own, validate the claims against her mother.
Yeah, because what the fuck else do you do when you're a toddler? Like,
So
toddlers don't think.
Yeah, you think like a little kid here. You're in trouble, like major, major trouble, and grown-ass men are grilling you and pressuring you. Maybe you say something that makes them happy with you.
Also, like, if you're a kid, if like
Anything,
enough people say something, you're gonna believe it.
Exactly, because that's our nature as innocent little children. The adults obviously know more than we do.
Except for when they don't.
which you don't realize until you're older.
Mhm.
So all of this, she should feel blameless, but she inevitably felt the guilt of that her entire life, which was for sure compounded by the PTSD that she absolutely had from her interrogations and from her time in prison. Salem, original Salem, is now Danvers, Massachusetts. Salem, as we know it, is the Salem 2.0, closer to the ocean, right on the ocean. They've gone on to embrace their witchy past. If you visit Salem, you can be greeted by a statue of Samantha from Bewitched. They have a visitor center, which has a lot of information available. You can visit the Salem Witch Museum, the Witch House, the Witch Trials Memorial, the Witch Dungeon Museum. There's ghost tours and tons of little houses to peep at, which we did peep at all the houses. They were pretty amazing. And you could also meet the official Witch of Salem, Lori Cabot, who I did meet.
Did you?
Mm-hmm. Because for some reason, my Catholic school decided that we would go to Salem for a field trip.
That's funny.
So, yes, we went to the Salem Witch Museum. We went to the House of Seven Gables. And they let us go into Lori Cabot's store. And Lori Cabot was walking in. So my friend and I got to meet her. She knew our names, which was weird.
How did she know your name?
I do not know. That is a distinct memory that I have. Because it's not like when you're talking to your friend, you're like,
You're not like saying each other.
hey, Megan, how's it going?
What's her name, Megan?
Yeah, it was Megan. And she's not going, Kim, it's great. No, that's not how we conversed. We rarely, if any time, said each other's names.
The assumption that you're talking to each other
stands.
is what.
Yeah.
Like.
So yes, that is how I met Lori Cabot when I was approximately your age.
My age?
Yes.
Okay, because I was going to ask, like, how old were you?
So the month of October is obviously Salem's time to shine.
Oh, yeah. Tourism is going crazy right now.
Another dirt bike.
Guys. Oh, come the fuck on. If you want to visit Salem, probably don't go during October.
It is crazy. It's fucking insane there. Absolutely insane. Everything spills out into the streets. They have the annual Haunting Happening events, which are pretty much every weekend in the month leading up to Halloween, where pretty much every business in town participates. Again, they do spill out into the streets. They had a zombie walk this past weekend. I do follow their Haunting Happenings page. But everything is, it's a hopping place. It's real busy. So if you don't like crowds, maybe go after Halloween.
Yeah.
Or, earlier in September.
If you still want to get that fall vibe, well, just like go any other time of the year if you don't care about the vibes. If you don't want the spooky.
I do really suggest the ghost tours. Dad and I went on a ghost tour. We have gone on more than a couple of ghost tours on our anniversaries because our anniversary is in October.
Yeah, when is it?
The 15th.
Yeah.
So, it's Salem is and was a crazy place. Hopefully, we learn from history and we don't do that shit again. Maybe don't feed our kids moldy bread.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe don't blanket every diagnosis as witchcraft.
Yeah. You think they would have said I was bewitched?
Yeah.
Or do you think I would have just been bewitched?
No, they would have said you were bewitched.
Why?
Because that's basically what your first diagnosis was.
But what if would they say I was bewitched, or would they accuse me of being?
No, they wouldn't accuse you of being one.
Why not? Why wouldn't they?
Oh, maybe they would have eventually. Maybe after that first initial diagnosis, they would have.
I feel
yeah, that was some crazy. You have no idea how angry your father and I were about that initial diagnosis. Fucking livid.
Oh wait, what?
Your official diagnosis when we were first, going through the system was oppositional defiance disorder.
A real mental illness.
It is.
No, I think a lot of the times, like when people get diagnosed with that, it's because they aren't looking at the source of that or the bigger issue. Like I think that's
a valid point
to say, oh, they have oppositional defiance disorder. But I think most of the time, if not all of the time, it's like some other mental illness or disorder or trauma or something that's causing them to behave like that.
And we did tell them that you did not speak to strangers, that it was unlikely that you would speak to them. There was we had no stranger danger conversations. Not a goddamn one. We never had to. You automatically distrusted pretty much everybody. You used to smell your food as a toddler in case I was poisoning you. So, yes, you would smell it every time. So, eventually you figured out that I wasn't going to poison you, so we're good now.
It happened many times. On all occasions, you did not poison me, so I figured I was probably safe.
Yeah.
I figured if you were going to do it, you probably would have already.
And when they threw down that ODD diagnosis,
I didn't know what poison smelled like, but I think I would have known it if I smelled it.
Yeah. No, that original ODD diagnosis, that was like, we were just like, you are a rule follower. You do not like to break the rules. You do not like to be in trouble.
I have gotten detention once, and it was lunch detention. No, because I've been thinking about this recently. And it was lunch detention in 6th grade because I forgot to do my homework. And they gave me lunch detention.
Wait, but this had to have been in the beginning of the year, right?
It was in 6th grade. I don't know. Why?
It had to have been.
Why?
Because in 6th grade...
Oh, yeah. Well, it was.
The Rona showed up.
We have that. They don't have to go home.
During that year, some issues came up.
No, because in 6th grade, got detention once. Lunch detention in 6th grade. Because I forgot to do my homework. And she gave everybody who forgot to do their homework and like probably some other minor transgressions, lunch detention. Like, I was not the only one. But I was the only one who showed up. I got my lunch. I showed up to her classroom. I sat outside her door almost the whole lunch. She comes at the end of the lunch, and she's like, I'm sorry, I forgot. I was sitting outside her classroom the whole fucking lunch.
Oh my
because
God.
I had lunch detention. Nobody else showed up. She didn't even show up.
Boy. Yeah. Yes. I haven't decided what we will be doing next week, but it will be Halloween themed as well. I'm going to keep it in the creepies.
Yeah, we got to keep the vibe going for a little bit.
And I'll probably do another one after that just because I can't let it go. Can't let it go. Won't let it go.
And with for like 3 months.
Yeah. And on that note, it is taco night, so yeah. We've got to go get some tacos. So follow us, rate us, email us if you'd like. SinnerStudiespod@gmail.com. Instagram, Facebook.
Do all the things. You've listened to enough episodes, you know. You could not probably guess. You can look at your screen right now on whatever fucking platform you're listening to. If you're listening on Stitcher, you're crazy. What the fuck is Stitcher? But like, do whatever they do on Stitcher, okay? Do whatever they do on whatever the fuck you're listening to this on. Yeah. She's a witch. You're a witch. Actually, I'm accusing you of witchcraft. Formally, I'm accusing you of witchcraft. Good luck. Adios.